the mail-order bride nobody had met. Then a cowboy's son ran to her and said, "Mama." News traveled fast and secrets never stayed hidden for long. On the edge of the town stood a wide ranch, its fences worn but strong. Cattle grazed slowly, and the sound of wind moving through tall grass filled the air. This ranch belonged to Thomas Hale, a cowboy known for his honesty and silence. He was not unfriendly, but he spoke only when needed. His face was lined by years of sun and responsibility, and his eyes carried a quiet weight that most people noticed but never asked about. Thomas had not always been like this. Years ago, he had laughed more. He had once walked through town with a woman by his side, proud and hopeful, but life had changed him. After his wife passed away, the light seemed to leave his home. What remained was work, routine, and a promise he made to himself to protect his son and keep the ranch alive, no matter how lonely the days became. His son Eli was 6 years old. He had bright eyes, quick feet, and a heart full of questions. Eli followed his father everywhere, copying how he walked, how he spoke to the horses, how he tipped his hat to neighbors. But there were moments when Eli would stop and stare at other families in town. He watched mothers brush their daughters' hair or hold their sons close. He never complained, but Thomas noticed. A father always does. Mornings on the ranch began before sunrise. Thomas prepared breakfast while Eli sat at the table swinging his legs, talking about his dreams. After eating, Thomas helped him get ready for school before riding out to tend the cattle. Evenings were quiet. They ate together, sometimes talking, sometimes not. At night, Thomas sat alone on the porch after Eli went to bed, staring at the stars and wondering if he was enough for his son. The townspeople noticed too. At church gatherings and market days, women whispered kindly but firmly. They said Eli needed a mother. They said Thomas needed help. At first, Thomas ignored them. He believed love could not be replaced, and he feared bringing a stranger into his son's life. But as time passed, the weight of doing everything alone grew heavier. One evening, Thomas came home to find Eli sitting on the steps, holding a piece of paper. He had picked it up from the general store where notices were posted. Thomas did not pay much attention at first, but later that night, after Eli was asleep, Thomas unfolded the paper. It spoke about companionship, about people seeking family through letters. It mentioned women willing to move to new places, to start new lives with honest men. Thomas stared at the paper for a long time. He folded it, unfolded it, then folded it again. He told himself it was foolish, but he could not forget the look in Eli's eyes when he watched other families. He could not forget how empty the house felt after dark. Days passed before Thomas finally decided. He sat at the table late at night with a pen in his hand. Writing did not come easily to him. He was better with horses than with words. Still, he tried. He wrote about the ranch, about his son, about his quiet life. He did not promise riches or romance. He promised honesty and hard work. When he finished, he sealed the letter and sent it away, unsure if anything would come of it. Weeks went by with no reply. Thomas nearly forgot about the letter. Then one afternoon, a response arrived. The envelope was plain, the writing neat. Inside was a letter from a woman named Clara. She wrote carefully, choosing her words with thought. She spoke of her love for simple living, her wish for a fresh start, and her respect for family. She did not ask many questions. She did not demand anything. Her tone was calm and kind. Thomas read the letter twice. Something about it felt sincere. He wrote back, keeping his words short but honest. Soon more letters followed. Clara shared small details about her life, nothing too personal, nothing dramatic. She spoke of learning skills, of caring for others, of understanding loss. But she never mentioned her past clearly, and she never sent a photograph. At first, Thomas did not mind. He told himself it was not important. But as weeks turned into months, the town grew curious. People noticed Thomas walking to the post office more often. They noticed the quiet smile that sometimes touched his face after reading a letter. Questions followed, but Thomas gave no answers. Eli noticed too. He asked who the letters were from. Thomas told him they were from a friend. Eli accepted this easily, but sometimes he asked when the friend would visit. Thomas had no answer. Eventually, the letters slowed, then stopped. Thomas felt a strange sense of loss, though nothing had truly begun. Then one final letter arrived. Clara wrote that she was willing to come. She would arrive by train on a certain date, carrying only what she owned. She said she understood if Thomas had doubts. She said she trusted him to be honest when they met. Thomas folded the letter carefully and sat in silence. The decision felt heavy but also right. He told Eli that someone was coming to visit. Eli's eyes widened with excitement. He asked many questions. Was she kind? Would she stay? Thomas could only say they would see. Word spread quickly. The idea of a woman arriving without a face or story captured everyone's attention. Some doubted her intentions, others doubted her existence. A few believed she was brave. The town waited, watched, and whispered. As the day approached, Thomas prepared the ranch as best he could. He cleaned the house, fixed loose boards, and tried to imagine another presence in the space. At night, he wondered who Clara really was. He wondered what she expected. He wondered if he was making a mistake. Eli counted the days. He spoke of the visitor as if she were already part of their lives. Thomas watched his son carefully, hoping he was not building dreams that could be broken. When the morning of the train's arrival finally came, Thomas dressed carefully and combed Eli's hair. They rode into town together, the sound of the train whistle already echoing in the distance. Thomas felt nervous, hopeful, and afraid all at once. He did not know that this day would change everything. The train station was already busy when Thomas and Eli arrived. People stood in small groups, pretending they were there for errands, but everyone knew the real reason. A woman was coming to town, a woman nobody had ever seen. The air felt different that morning, filled with quiet excitement and doubt. The old clock above the platform ticked loudly, as if reminding everyone that the moment was close. Thomas stood near the edge of the platform, his hat pulled low. Eli stayed close to his side but kept leaning forward, trying to see down the tracks. The boy's eyes shone with curiosity. He did not fully understand why everyone was watching them, but he felt something important was about to happen. The sound of the train grew louder. A long whistle cut through the air, and soon the dark shape of the engine appeared in the distance. Steam rose as it slowed down. People straightened their backs and fixed their clothes. Some whispered. Others went silent. The train finally stopped with a sharp sound. One by one, passengers stepped down. A well-dressed couple walked past, followed by an older man carrying tools. Two young women laughed as they greeted someone waiting for them. Thomas scanned every face, his heart beating faster each second. More people stepped down. None came toward him. Thomas felt his shoulders grow heavy. He told himself not to expect too much. He reminded himself that letters were only words. Still, a quiet disappointment began to settle in his chest. Eli looked up at him, sensing the change. "Papa," Eli said softly, "is she coming?" Her dress was simple, the color faded from use. She stood still for a moment as if unsure where to go. Her face showed nervousness and strength at the same time. She looked around slowly, her eyes careful, searching. She did not rush. She did not smile. She simply stood there, holding her suitcase tightly, as if it was the only thing keeping her steady. Thomas felt something tighten inside him. He did not know why, but he knew this was Clara. Before he could move or speak, Eli pulled his hand free. The boy ran forward, his small boots tapping quickly against the wooden platform. Thomas reached out, startled, but it was too late. Eli ran straight to the woman. She barely had time to react before the child wrapped his arms around her waist. His face pressed against her dress as if he had done it 100 times before. He looked up at her with complete certainty. "Mama," he said. The words seemed to freeze the world. The station went silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the train engine seemed quieter. Thomas felt his breath catch in his throat. His first thought was to apologize, to pull Eli away, but his legs would not move. Clara's eyes widened. Her hands shook as she looked down at the boy. For a moment she looked frightened, as if the word had struck her deeply. Then her knees slowly bent and she lowered herself to Eli's level. She did not correct him. She did not pull away. Instead, she placed one hand gently on his back, the other on his shoulder. Her touch was careful, almost unsure, but it held warmth. Her eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. Thomas finally found his voice. He stepped forward. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. He didn't mean. When she looked at Thomas, her eyes were steady, though her face showed how overwhelmed she felt. "You must be Thomas," she said. He nodded. "And this is Eli." Thomas invited Clara to walk with them away from the platform. She followed, still holding Eli's hand. The boy chatted as if nothing unusual had happened. He talked about the ranch, about his horse, about how big his room was. Clara listened closely, smiling softly, answering when he asked her questions. As they walked, Thomas noticed how naturally she matched Eli's pace. She did not rush him. She did not ignore him. She treated him as if he mattered, as if she had always known him. They reached the wagon waiting nearby. Thomas helped Clara place her suitcase inside. It was light, too light for someone starting a new life. That thought stayed with him. The ride to the ranch was quiet at first. Clara looked around, taking in the open land, the wide sky. She did not complain about the dust or the long road. She simply watched, as if learning a place she had imagined many times before. Eli sat close to her, leaning against her arm. At one point he fell asleep. Without thinking, Clara adjusted her position so his head rested more comfortably. The movement was natural, practiced, as if it came from memory. Thomas noticed everything. When they reached the ranch, Clara stepped down and looked at the house. It was modest but strong, standing proudly against the land. She took a deep breath. "It's peaceful," she said. Inside, Thomas showed her the rooms. Nothing was fancy. Everything had a purpose. Clara nodded, accepting it all. When Thomas showed her the room prepared for her, she paused. "Thank you," she said, "for making space." When bedtime came, he hesitated at his door. Clara knelt in front of him and wished him good night. He hugged her again. "Good night, Mama," he said. Clara's breath caught, but she smiled. "Good night, Eli." What he said. That night, Clara lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling. She placed a hand over her heart, still feeling the echo of a child's voice calling her a word she never thought she would hear again. Morning light entered the ranch house slowly, touching the wooden floor and the quiet walls. Clara woke early, long before anyone else. For a few moments she lay still, listening to the sounds around her. The wind moved outside and somewhere a bird called. It felt strange to wake up in a place that was not fully hers, yet did not feel unfamiliar either. She sat up and took a deep breath. Her heart still carried the weight of the day before. The boy's voice echoed in her mind. That single word had shaken something deep inside her, something she had buried long ago. She dressed quietly and stepped out into the kitchen. Thomas was already awake. He sat at the table, his hat beside him, staring into a cup of coffee. He looked up when he saw her and stood, unsure of what to do. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," Clara replied. There was an awkward pause, then Clara moved toward the stove. "May I?" she asked, pointing to the pan. "Yes, of course." "Morning, Mama," he said easily. Thomas stiffened, but Clara simply smiled. "Good morning," she said, gently brushing his hair back. "Are you hungry?" Thomas said little, but he felt something shift inside him. The house felt alive in a way it had not for years. As the days passed, Clara slowly became part of the ranch routine. She learned quickly, helping where she could. She swept floors, mended clothes, and cooked meals with what little they had. She did not complain about the work or the long hours. When she struggled, she tried again quietly. The town watched closely. Some people were kind, others remained doubtful. They noticed how Clara kept to herself, how she spoke politely but never shared too much. They wondered where she came from and why she carried herself with such caution. Thomas noticed it too. At night, after Eli was asleep, they sometimes talked. The conversations were gentle but careful, like steps on thin ice. Thomas asked about her skills, her likes, her thoughts on ranch life. Clara answered honestly but never spoke much about her past. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to," Thomas said one evening. "I know," Clara replied, "but some things are hard to say out loud." Eli grew more attached each day. He followed Clara around the house, holding her hand, showing her everything. He trusted her fully, without question. Clara never pushed the word he used for her, but she never corrected him either. Each time he said it, her heart ached in a quiet, tender way. One afternoon, while washing clothes near the back of the house, Clara paused. Her hands trembled slightly. A memory rose without warning, sharp and painful. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. Thomas happened to walk by and noticed her pale face. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said quickly, then hesitated. "Sometimes memories come back when you don't invite them. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen." One evening, Thomas came home exhausted and sick with a fever. He tried to hide it, but Clara noticed immediately. She guided him to bed and stayed by his side through the night, cooling his forehead and urging him to drink water. "You don't have to do this," Thomas murmured. "I want to," she said simply. Eli sat nearby, watching with worry. Clara reassured him gently, promising his father would be fine. Her calm steadiness soothed them both. During those quiet hours, something changed between Thomas and Clara. Trust began to grow, not from words but from actions. He saw her strength, her patience, her care. She saw his effort, his devotion to his son, his quiet kindness. When Thomas recovered, he thanked her, awkwardly but sincerely. "You didn't have to stay." Thomas noticed and stepped closer, his presence firm but calm. The woman said nothing more. That night, Clara finally spoke about her past, though not in full detail. They sat on the porch watching the stars. "I once loved a child very deeply," she said quietly, "and I lost that chance. I came here not knowing what I was truly looking for." People saw how Eli thrived, how the house felt warmer, how Thomas smiled more often. Yet inside Clara, fear remained. She worried that one day the truth would surface fully, that she would be asked to leave, that everything would be taken away again. She held her happiness carefully, afraid to believe it was permanent. One evening, Eli asked a simple question. "Mama, are you staying forever?" She looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. "I hope so." It started with the cattle growing restless and the sky changing color in the late afternoons. Thomas noticed it before anyone else. Years on the land had taught him to read small warnings. The wind felt sharper. The clouds moved faster. Something was coming. One evening, as they finished dinner, thunder rolled in the distance. Eli jumped at the sound and Clara reached for his hand without thinking. He squeezed her fingers tightly. "It's just a storm," Thomas said gently. "We've had worse." When a loud crack echoed outside, he knew part of the old barn roof had given way. By morning, the ranch looked tired and wounded. Fences were down. Mud covered the paths. One of the smaller sheds leaned dangerously to one side. Thomas went straight to work, pushing his body harder than he should have. Clara tried to help, but worry sat heavy in her chest. By midday, Thomas collapsed near the fence line. Eli saw it first and ran, shouting for help. Clara reached Thomas just as his eyes closed. Fear rushed through her, sharp and cold. She called his name again and again. When he finally stirred, his face was pale, his body burning with fever. Clara helped him back to the house with steady strength she did not know she had. For days, Thomas lay weak. The ranch work piled up and neighbors hesitated, unsure if it was their place to step in. Clara did not hesitate at all. She took control quietly. She organized what needed to be done, asked for help when necessary, and never once acted as if she did not belong. She tended to Thomas with patience, cooling his forehead, making sure he drank water, sitting beside him through long nights. Eli rarely left her side. He trusted her completely now, not just with his heart but with his safety. One night Thomas opened his eyes and saw Clara sitting there, worn but strong. "You're carrying too much," he whispered. She shook her head. "This is what family does." Afraid to let anyone in again. They saw how Clara worked beside Thomas, how she cared for Eli, how she never spoke badly of anyone. Slowly, the past questions stopped mattering. One afternoon, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. He was an older man, tired from travel, carrying news Clara had feared for years. He knew her from before. He knew her story. Clara listened as he spoke, her hands trembling. He meant no harm, but his presence threatened the fragile peace she had built. When he left, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That evening, Clara told Thomas everything. She spoke slowly, honestly, with tears she did not hide. She spoke of loss, of choices made under pressure, of the pain that followed her across years and miles. She told him why she never sent a photograph, why she kept her past guarded, why that one word from Eli had broken her open. When she finished, she waited. Her heart pounded as if it might tear itself apart. Thomas did not speak right away. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the land that had tested him all his life. Then he turned back to her. "You didn't come here to take anything," he said. "You came here to give. No one is taking our son." Laughter returned fully. Thomas and Clara worked side by side, no longer careful, no longer unsure. Love had grown quietly between them, shaped by trust and shared struggle. They did not rush anything. They did not need to. When Thomas finally asked Clara to stay forever, he did not do it with grand words. He simply took her hand one evening and said, "This life makes sense with you in it." He held both their hands, proud and certain. The mail-order bride nobody had met became the woman everyone respected. The cowboy who once lived in silence found his voice again. And the child who ran to a stranger and called her mama was never wrong. Because sometimes, family is not found by planning or promises. Sometimes, it is found in the moment you choose to stay.